To kick things off, we're going to find out more about the strategic value of a B2B community. And for folks who may be newer to this side of the community space, B2B stands for business to business. Lynda and Molly will tell us more about their B2B communities and where they sit in their organizations. And we're going to discuss the key questions, steps, and elements necessary for building communities before we get to answering your questions live with the audience Q&A at the end. So please post any questions as we're going through our conversation today. We have a bunch of really great questions. I met with Molly and Lynda last week, and I got to hear all of their brainstorming, and they have so many golden nuggets of wisdom. So make sure you have your notepad out to take some notes. And without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump into discussion. So Molly, can you tell us more about your community and where they sit to your organization? And Lynda, then we'd love to hear from you as well.
Yes, I'd be happy to kick us off. First of all, hi, everyone. Thank you so much for having me. My name is Molly. I am the Senior Community Manager at Gong. If you don't know what Gong is, hopefully you do, but it is an AI revenue intelligence platform that captures your customer interactions and then delivers insights at scale, also helping your teams make decisions based on data. So I manage the community at Gong, and the Visioneer community is a space for revenue professionals and Gong customers to connect with each other and ask questions and share their best practices and grow in their career. We've had over 150,000 people spend time in our community, and we have thousands of registered members. Our members are customers and prospects in roles all the way from like RevOps and sales enablement, all the way to CROs and CEOs. We are a community of best practices. We also have opportunities for folks to connect with each other. So one-on-one or in small meetup groups, which I'll talk about a little bit later. We have a channel for people to submit product feedback, participate in exclusive events, and so much more. And in terms of where community sits at Gong, we sit within the support organization, which lives under the larger customer success umbrella. So our community is actually on the post-sale side. And that's part of the reason why our community is open to the public. We really wanted to be able to show our prospects what the community experience was like. And from an internal perspective, we can use data to show ARR influence based on which of our prospects are spending time in the community. And then if that prospect becomes a customer, we can actually attribute community to being a touch point in the sales cycle. So we have some really nice Salesforce dashboards that our ops team has built us. So we actually can see how much ARR we've influenced, which has helped us build a really strong case for community at Gong.
Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that brief overview. And Lynda, over to you so we can learn about your community as well.
Thanks. That was great, Molly. And thanks all for being here today and for having me to share a bit about our community. Our community is different than Molly's, so I think there's kind of a nice give and take here in our conversation. So I am with HR Acuity. I am the head of research and community. So HR Acuity is our company. Our community is called Empower. And HR Acuity as a company is obsessed with employee relations. We are a SaaS company in the employee relations space, which is a segment of human resources that is dedicated to handling, providing solutions to address the entire life cycle of employee concerns. So from the time an employee is hired to the time that they leave, everything that happens during that employee's life at the organization. And our software helps document, track, analyze all of the employee issues that happen with employees in their organization. And it helps build trust with employees because there are processes built in. It helps create safer, fairer workplaces for organizations and protects their brand and mitigates risk exposure. But separate from our tech, we are category thought leaders in employee relations. And we really lead the industry. This is a big differentiator from our competitors. And so, so under that realm, I head up the community and research, as I mentioned. Our research includes things like industry benchmarking studies, plays into community as well. There's a lot of benchmarking that happens within the community, but we do an annual benchmark report that represents about 8 million employees. And it covers best practices, and people rely on the data to shape their function and to staff their ER functions and assign cases and things like that. And then it also provides insights into trends and practices and processes, which is all related to our community as well, because people are looking for that information. I head up our community, which is about 25% customers and 75% prospects. So very different from Molly's. We arrived at this because it grew out of an annual employee relations roundtable that we have run since 2015, where it's like a think tank, basically, where employee relations leaders come together to share challenges and best practices and collaborate on things. And they wanted more connection. So we basically started doing some pulse surveys and benchmarking surveys for them and having quarterly calls, and they still wanted more. So we decided to create this community that's exclusively for everyone in the, not just the leaders, but everyone in the employee relations field to contact, network with each other and connect and help them navigate the changing workplace. It's 5,500 members, and it's growing daily, and there's lots of engagement, conversations, events, resources, jobs board, very similar to Molly's in lots of ways in terms of the content and the things that we provide to our membership. But two of the things that we're really proud of is that our membership is growing rapidly. So we've had 51% growth rate year over year for the past 2 years. Which is great because, as I said, it's largely prospects and it fuels our pipeline and our sales. So like Molly, we have some great Salesforce dashboards that we use to track our influence on generated pipeline and ARR. And we have found also that when organizations that are in pipe, when they close a deal, the deal size tends to be twice as big as if the organizations did not have members in Empower. So that really demonstrates to our leadership and our board the value of our community. We have 2 people who help with our community. I have a coordinator who reports into me, who deals with our day-to-day managing events and all the back-end stuff. And I couldn't do it without her because it's growing rapidly. And it sits in marketing, and that makes sense for us because it is largely prospect-based. It also sits in marketing because it was kind of my brainchild to come up with this, and we had these existing, external kind of VIP members, if you will, of our community already. And so we built it kind of for them. We also had a very robust support center already established with resources and webinars and things as well. So lots of content there. So it made sense to start it as a separate thing. We're looking to combine them at some point, but we'll get into that a little later.
Thank you so much, Lynda. That was such a great, both of you, such a great overview of both of your communities and the impact that they are having and how they sit differently in your organizations. Lynda, as I was listening to what you were sharing, it really stood out to me that you were talking about you started with a roundtable and then you were doing a pulse survey. And so I'm wondering, why should B2B businesses prioritize building online communities? It sounds like you started to do the groundwork first. And could you give us a better look into like how you got your company into prioritizing community?
Sure. For us, as I said, it really was driven by our members because they wanted more. And so we really just listen to our members, and we try to provide all the way. Everything we do in community is about listening to what our members are looking for and providing them with the resources and the connections and the things that they need to help do their jobs better. And that goes back to our kind of overall mission where we say we're obsessed with employee relations. So we really are in this journey with them alongside. We partner with them pre-sales. There are organizations who will never have told us they will never be customers for one reason or another with the systems that they have embedded. We don't care. We really just want them to be part of our community and to be active and to help others along. And they love that. So, so for us, you know, there are a couple things. They tell us that we provide value and information that they cannot get anywhere else. You can go to a SHRM conference or something like that and get a 45-minute session on employee relations, but you know, you can come to the roundtable and get days, or you can come to the community and live in employee relations and get all the connections that you could dream of. So there are extensive resources, expert partners that they get exposed to, learnings, and the member connections. So they see how committed we are to partnering with them on that journey, so that there's huge value in that. And then, as I mentioned, the deal size, like the fact that it's just so important to us as a business because it's helping our business grow. We meet organizations kind of where they are. So there's a lot of education that has to happen. A lot of these organizations don't have technology yet. And so why, as prospects, should we be cramming information down there, you know, down at them when they need to be educated on why this matters and how they can do things better and the data that they can get and all the things. And so the community provides a way for us to bring them in and nurture them and educate them and keep them warm, and develop their skills and learn from others, from proven practices until they're ready to buy. And then when they are, we can slide them into pipeline based on other marketing data and kind of meet them at the right time. So it shortens, in theory, the sales cycle. The deals are bigger. And it also, we're part of the conversation when they're looking for tech because we've been there with them already. Doesn't mean we always win those deals. There are lots of factors that go into, you know, the tech solution buy, but we are in the room because they've already been part of our community.
Oh, that's beautiful. And you're at the decision-making table with them and you're helping to influence and inform
in
them.
some cases. I mean, the decision-making process involves legal and compliance, and there's a lot of people in this pie. So we just have the employee relations piece, but yes, we have a voice.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And Molly, I know that you sit on the post-sale side, so I would love to hear your perspective of why businesses should prioritize community building.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And Lynda, we've talked a little bit about this, but we sit on totally different sides of the spectrum, right? She's pre-sales, we're post-sales, but I think our reason for being is pretty similar. And the way we think about it at Gong is that marketing solves for the why and community solves for the how. So for us, if people don't know what your product is or how others are using it, they probably won't buy it or use it once they do buy it. So at Gong, community is the only place where our customers have direct access to each other's knowledge, where people are teaching each other how to use our product better. It's also the only channel where we at Gong have direct access to the voices of our customers and prospects. So it really helps us understand how people are talking about our product, how people are using the product, and also what people want more of.
Yeah.
And something that we've uncovered is that people in the Visioneer community end up buying 3 times more Gong than people who aren't in the community. So community at Gong is a really impactful part of our renewals and upsells. I think another reason why it's so important that B2B organizations prioritize community is that it helps you scale all of your efforts across customer success, product, marketing, support. Your customers and prospects are literally doing the work for you. They're teaching others how to use their product. They're talking about your product. They're selling your features for you. So it's a really important lever in terms of scaling all of your efforts. And then finally, just to touch on Lynda's point, again, we sit on post-sales, but our community has been really key to building brand equity and helping create a category in our market.
Absolutely.
I just want to add one other thing. I completely agree with you. And there's one thing that Molly said that just reminded me of something that I forgot to include is that, so, you know, customers and prospects are always talking in community about how they're using the product and different ways that they can leverage the product. But it also, they also have challenges, and the market is constantly, our industry is constantly changing. If you think back at employee relations, like pre-COVID, people weren't dealing with return to work and PPE and home offices and et cetera. Now they're dealing with mental health challenges, and they're expected to triage all these things. So the workplace and the return to office mandates and all of that, and social and political, geopolitical issues that are coming into the workplace, and reaction and activism and all of that. The lines are just so blurred. So the constant challenge and change is happening. But what community also allows us to do as a company is to keep our finger on the pulse of where the industry is going. And I think the same with you, Molly. Like, you hear what your customers are doing and how they're using it. And I'm sure there are challenges or things that they'd love to see that, if you're intentional about it from the company side, you're looking at what's happening in your community and monitoring it and seeing what should be coming next. Or, oh, it spurs product ideas. It spurs customer sensitivity points when someone is up for a renewal and you hear them asking a question. If they're asking about an investigation tool, what else someone uses, you need to be in there and say, hey, what's going on? Hopefully it doesn't get to that point, but it does shape roadmap and all of that because we know what's happening in the industry. And I think that's a really valuable window that a lot of companies don't have if they don't have community.
Yes, actually, I'm totally veering us a little bit, but and I may end up talking about this later, but Lynda, you just reminded me, like, in terms of roadmap and understanding how people are using the product, there's a section within our community where people can share product feedback or request new features. It's the only place in all of Gong where people can do that, is in the community. And I just met with a member of our product team who collaborates with me on that effort, and she said that we get such detailed, specific feedback from our customers that submit through community, as opposed to people, who anecdotally share feedback or feature requests with CSMs, because people are in the community and they're so invested in the product and they want to participate. So again, it's the only place for us where we get to hear exactly what our customers want and need. And sometimes it's not always positive, but it's important to have a pulse on those conversations and feedback regardless.
Oh my gosh. And not veering at all, Molly. And I'm really glad, Lynda, that you brought this up, because I think it just speaks to both of your passions so well. And also, I guess that's a perfect segue too into our next question, which is, how do you contextualize the impact that your community is having on your business? So specifically, how does your community support your B2B organization? How do you measure that? What does that look like? And Molly, I think you mentioned a framework that you use last week when we connected. Would you mind kicking us off?
Yes, of course. And I actually have a slide on this, so I will not drill into this, but I'll give a high level overview. This is the framework that we use to measure the impact of community at Gong. It's called SPACES, and each of the letters in SPACES stands for an objective. And each of those objectives has associated KPIs. So because we sit in support, we make sure that before anything else, we're tying our efforts to the support team's goals. And so one of our primary goals as a community is to get our customers to solve questions for each other, as opposed to people reaching out to our support team. And so our KPI is % case deflection. That's not to say that we don't also work towards all of these other objectives. We actually aim to positively impact all 6 components of SPACES. And that's why it's so important that we partner with all of our departments across marketing and product and education and success and sales, so that we're highlighting their programs and their messaging. And I just mentioned product. So like I said, product community is the only place where people can submit their own product feedback or feature requests. The other thing that we have in our community is a group called Product Partners. It's private, just to customers. It's actually sponsored by our Chief Product Officer, and it's specifically for customers who have raised their hand to participate in beta programs or want to share feedback on new releases. So it's a direct channel between our customers and our product team. And that's something that they can't get anywhere else besides community. I'll share 2 other examples. So for marketing, we use community, even though, again, we're on post sales, but we use it as a channel to promote webinars or customer events or really anything that our customers and prospects might find valuable. We use community to help source customer stories for our customer marketing team. We have run content campaigns alongside our blog team, our events team, that end up becoming evergreen content. And in terms of success, so little bit of nuance here, but my manager I report into also manages our digital customer success arm. So it's a specific digital experience for our SMB customers that leverages community, academy, and help center as channels for self-service and education. So a lot of the programs that we take on support our SMB organization, and community is actually a huge cornerstone of the digital customer experience. So all that to say, it's really important that B2B organizations prioritize community, because it can really support all of the arms of your organization, not necessarily just where it sits or who you report into.
Oh, thank you so much, Molly. And folks, you'll be able to see that slide in the follow-up email too. So if you're taking notes, you'll be able to get that afterwards as well. And Lynda, I would love for you to kind of explain, how are you showing the impact of community?
Sure. So a lot of what Molly said, I'll just build on. But we do a lot of the same things because it does sit in marketing. So all of the content promotion and webinar promotion, we have a very robust webinar program on our actual company site. We have 3 webinars a month. We get like over 1,000, routinely over 1,000 people registered for those, and more than 50% attending. And those are all like expert thought leaders who partner with us and do those webinars. Sometimes they're internal people. And in addition to like our product demo webinars, which we don't promote in the community, because we are very intentional, because it is a prospect community. Largely, we try to leverage our customers in there. And I would love to be where Molly is with having all the support in there and all of that. And we are working towards our SMBs, that we're having like a low touch digital experience, kind of, I guess is what they're calling it. And so community is perfect for that. So we're really working towards that. We are not as far along because it's not the customer focus, but because it's prospect focus, we are very intentional about not giving them, product information right off the bat, but really focusing on the thought leadership pieces. So we do tie in all of our marketing content wherever applicable, and then kind of we listen to what's happening and get them into pipeline when we can. And as I mentioned before, like it definitely impacts our roadmap and what's happening within even our roundtable. Now it impacts our roundtable live discussions as we're prepping the sessions. We can say, oh, well, what have we been hearing in here? This is really timely. Let's blow this out for the leaders at a strategic level. So it helps shape that agenda as well. And then in terms of our value to our organization, we do similar to Molly. We have tied our membership to our influence on both pipeline and revenue. So we track if there's an organization that has joined Empower, our community, before they become an opportunity, we get credit for generated influence on generated pipeline. And if an account joins during their journey to become a customer, then we get credit for influencing that ARR. And it's an influenced revenue number because we don't have control over whether they buy or not. However, we've done a lot of, on the data side, our digital marketing guy has done a lot of research and just digging into our data to see how our thought leadership, not just, well, it all falls under community, but our benchmark studies, our annual studies, our roundtable, and our actual online community, how that all feeds into our pipeline, because we spend a lot of time and money on these things. So we just want to demonstrate the influence and prove that the value is there. But I would love to be further along. We also look, even though it's only 25% customers, we do listen to the conversations and tap people to be evangelists and case studies. And, actually we use them for panels and things in our events, because they will sell for us. We don't ask them to say anything, but in the conversations organically on ER topics, people will say, well, how do you track that? Or well, we use Acuity for X, Y, and Z. So we do a lot of similar things to Molly, just not on steroids on the customer side. I'd like to get there.
Absolutely. And community takes time too. So it sounds like you're both balancing with the resources that you have. And Lynda, what are the key questions do you think need to be asked before starting a community? I'm so curious in hearing your thoughts about that.
So I think it's really important to gather your key stakeholders and, customers, prospects, key prospects, industry leaders in our case, and hold like kind of informal focus groups, and explain what your purpose is and why you're thinking this might be a good idea, and asking for input. And with the lens of what they're looking for, right? You kind of know going in, but you need to frame it as not something you're doing for you, but for your company, but for them. What's the value to them? And then ask, what features they'd like to see. You might have to prompt them because they may not be familiar with things in an online community if they haven't been part of a community like this before. Things like, would you like to see polls or news or trainings or events, whether they're virtual or live? Would you like to have templates and resources? Is there value in member contributed content? What does that look like? Do you want to have a portfolio where you can share your own things, private messaging, directory, all those kinds of things? And then, what activities or events would they be likely to attend? Because it's very different. You can ask, what they'd like to have in there or what their vision list is, but like it's really important to understand how likely they are going to be to attend, how often they would visit and use it, how they see working it into their routine, because you're asking them to change their patterns of behavior, and everybody's work schedule is already really busy and they have the things that they go to, but you're wanting them to come to a dedicated space regularly, frequently, for value. So what is that value? And then also you need to ask things about, what concerns they would have, privacy, security issues, sharing sensitive information. What does that all look like? Actually, one of our customers in our focus group asked if we could have in our product, because employee relations is extremely sensitive information, every time a user on our platform logs in, there is a message that pops up that says you're entering a space where you're going to be sharing sensitive information, make sure that it's confidential, whatever, just, this, you can't share this, et cetera. And she said, I think it would be great if that same pop-up showed up at the beginning of community every time people logged in because of the nature of sensitivity. So those kinds of things are important to learn or people won't come. Also, don't be afraid to ask if they would pay, if you're going to have a paying community. Some are free, some are not. Ours is free. And then how much would you pay? You'll be surprised by what you hear. Some people will say, oh, I have no budget, or, oh, I don't know, $100. And some will say, you're providing this crazy value. I'd pay $10,000 to belong to some, high level thing, or maybe you should have different levels, but you'll get a lot of insight from people if you just ask. And then I think on the flip side, you just, you need to assess if you need buy-in from your internal leadership and cross-functional teams. You also need to meet with them and kind of go to them and ask what value they think it would have on the business. They think it would have on the business and how it could help. And same thing, what concerns they might have, how it fits into the overall business strategies and objectives, and would they be supportive of the initiative, and what does that support look like in terms of commitment, accountability, KPIs, all that kind of stuff. And I know I'm going to pass to Molly because I know she has a lot of good things to add on that side of things with the internal stakeholders.
Sure. Yeah, I think our philosophy around this is pretty similar in that there are two questions that you need to ask. And I think it's important the order in which you do it. The first question is, what problems are your customers or your potential community members looking to solve? Because your people will always come first. When we built our community in 2021, we interviewed over 100 people and asked them what they cared about and what they wanted from our community. And the way we identified these people was based on their involvement in other aspects of the business. So we knew that they were involved with Gong in some way, whether they had high annual recurring revenue or net dollar retention. They had a high propensity to upsell. They attended a lot of webinars. They posted about us on LinkedIn. There were all of these vectors that we could measure to find those engaged people. And then we spent time understanding their challenges and learning what they were trying to solve. Literally, we had like meetings, one-on-ones with all of these people, trying to understand their challenges. Something that we uncovered, this is an example of something that folks wanted from our community. Actually, the number one request was for people to be able to connect one-on-one with each other to learn more about Gong. So we created a networking program specifically for our community members to learn and teach each other how to use Gong. So I think it's really key that you start with your people and involve them in your community building process. The second question that you should ask is, what problem is your organization trying to solve? Once you know what your community wants, then you can align with your leadership and your organization's priorities. And it actually makes it really easy to build a business case for community and connect the dots between what your segment of the business is solving for and what your community members need when you understand the needs of your people first. I think our philosophy around this, it's important to mention that you should do all of these things. You should ask those two questions before you buy a platform and turn all these features on. And I think that's an inclination that people might have, is we've got to get a platform and we've got to build out this experience. I think start with your people, external and then internal, before you do all that.
I completely agree. I mean, we spent a lot of time doing that initial research and finding out, and then kind of doing research on, because you need to have that information before you even consider a platform, because if the platform provides, features that aren't really applicable or wanted by your audience, or helpful to you as an organization, it's just not gonna work. So I totally agree.
Absolutely. And thank you both so much for sharing those initial questions. And our next question that we have slated is, could you share tips on communicating your community's value to your organization? Molly, would you mind kicking us off?
Yes, I think this is a really nice question to build on the last question. It's so important that you help your organization understand the value and what's in it for them. The way we did this at Gong, first and foremost, we found someone at our executive level who understood the value of community, and we made him our champion. At that point in time, it was our COO. I mentioned the SPACES framework earlier. So again, each of those letters in SPACES stands for an objective. Help your executive understand how your community solves for each of those objectives. So again, we have goals and KPIs for each of those dimensions so that our leaders at Gong can understand the value of our community. I mentioned Salesforce dashboards. We also have dashboards so that we can measure our impact in real time. It's also always helpful to have quantitative data for your execs. So any dashboards that you have, whether they're through Salesforce or out of the box within your community tool, anything that you can share will be impactful for them. Also, make sure to ask your leaders and internal stakeholders for feedback and direction so that you're staying aligned to what they care about, you're involving them in the process of building. And then once you have executive buy-in, you have to teach people the value of your community. And so we found people at Gong in product, marketing, sales, success, helped them understand how our community will solve problems for them. And then we got them involved and invested in community. Examples of this are someone on our CS product side actually manages a group in community. And that was his idea. It was like, wow, this is a really great channel where we have access to customers. I'm going to create a group within this community specifically for our product, where I can get feedback and share updates and connect directly with people who use that product. I think it's also really important to go on a roadshow. So again, teaching people why community is important and how it helps. You should have a deck. You should ask for 15 minutes on people's calendar. Everybody has 15 minutes. And if you can't get time on calendars to teach people, just film a video of yourself, like walking through your deck, and send it out. And then I think lastly is always being open to offering thought leadership opportunities to people at Gong. So people will come to me all the time and Slack me and be like, hey, I have a really great idea for a post about how I, left teaching and became a customer success product lead. Like, that's a great post for community. We are so open to any kind of best practice content living in our community. And actually, some of our best content comes from our employees. Finally, I think this was something that came up in my conversation with Lynda, is asking your leaders to post about community for you, because I can talk about community all the time, but if it's coming from me, it might not have as big of an impact as if our CRO or our COO posts about community. I make this so easy for them. I write the post for them. I say, hey, look what's going on in community. We just had this great event. Here's the results. And then I send it to our CEO, who can just copy and paste it into Slack. It gets a lot more traction that way.
Oh, beautiful tips. Thank you so much, Molly.
It's incredible, Molly. I am so inspired and encouraged. And I told you the other day, we're going to have conversations offline. So Molly's much further down the line than I am in this area. And as she's speaking, I'm thinking, why is that, Lynda? Because we're very data driven. We're very kind of focused on like the value of things internally, externally, buy-in, the cross-functional connections and all of that. And it's so key. And I feel like Molly has a really excellent handle on all the critical pieces. We don't do enough in this area. And I guess it's a word of caution to those. So when we built, and and as I was thinking about why, it's because of the way we added community. Like I had a full role. We had a really small marketing team. In fact, there was one other and I on the marketing team when we decided to add community. So our plates were super full and we didn't add a headcount to community. And so the way it just grew kind of organically and like as we were doing it. But I think it's so valuable and we've demonstrated the value. And if I knew that it took me a year and a half to get somebody else on my staff to be able to really focus on it full time. And I was not able to do it justice. So I guess my advice there would be, and I don't know how you started, Molly, but I think having a dedicated resource that is really like their primary responsibility is focused on this would have helped me get further along, because now we're not evangelizing enough. We are like one thing that we attended the recent CMX Summit, and one thing that we took away from there, one of the biggest things was celebrate your successes and toot your own horn regularly, but not, we're not good at that. And Molly was saying the other day, she's not good. Like nobody likes to do that, but the way she is doing it is very clever. And to get your internal stakeholders and to, just kind of chip away at all of them and show the value and listen to their feedback and hear what they want to do, I think is critical. And then providing kind of updates in also company-wide in like all hands periodically and things like that, emails. I love the video idea that Molly had as well. And I think it's because we didn't have that initial head count, and we also had our CS structure with support and really robust CS program and CS center, support center set up. It's been harder for us to get internal commitment and buy-in to the KPIs and the accountability and the ownership of different pieces of it. They definitely see the value, but I think if we had had somebody come in and deal with that differently from the beginning, that would have been probably more helpful. Hindsight, right? We're fortunate that our leadership and our board get it and they see the value. And it's actually community growth is a core piece of one of our company's top 3 objectives. So we're lucky in that regard, and we'll chip away. We'll get there.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And on that thought too, Lynda, what strategies do you use to drive adoption and active participation within your community? And like thinking about how you've built this stakeholder influence and you're chipping away at that, how are you then also balancing engagement and driving adoption in your community space?
So, I mean, we use what we leverage our most active users and our customers that are we have really happy customers and a very low churn rate. And so We want to celebrate them and we want to honor them and feature them. And so we really work hard to identify kind of evangelists and key people in the community. And they're not all customers. There are people, sometimes they're new members who say, oh my gosh, this is amazing. And I'd love to have conversations on X, Y, and Z. And so we're like, wow, this person's really engaged. We'll have an intro conversation, see if they're strategic enough to be interested in and at the right level to be hosting or leading an event. And so we find those evangelists and we really work with them, develop relationships with them, try to find out how we can help them build their brand and share their expertise to help people come along. And I think we have a lot of interactive discussion events. So I think initially people come for the resources, they come for answers, looking for things and documents and templates and all of that and learnings. But what they come back for is the connections, the member to member connections. And so we are trying really hard. We have a ton of great content, which is and checklists and all kinds of things, playbooks, which are very helpful. But we are trying really hard to be kind of the facilitator in the background and not and just be the glue that makes things happen and connects people at every opportunity. And I loved what Molly said about the one-to-one networking because we're looking to add things like that in the future. It's been hard for us because we don't have our analytics are not quite as strong, so we don't have a great window into how people are, what they're using most in community and trying to offer more. But we're trying to have more conversational events and they have really taken off. Like a year ago, we were getting 50 people to register and half of that to attend. And now our registrations are often, above 150 and we have over 100 attend sometimes. So I feel like we're moving in the right direction. And a lot of it has been like kind of organic growth and like a lot of test and learn, throwing things at the wall to see what works and pivoting based on that. And we don't get it right all the time, but we do feel like they're happy when they participate and lead events. They're happy when they come to events. We're trying to build relationships with with these evangelists and with some strategic people. We try to reward them with swag and show them we appreciate them and call them out. We do things like call out engaged members and, we're trying to gamify things more because everybody loves that. We also, as I said earlier, like it's really important to offer them content that is super relevant. So it's important to constantly ask, what topics are top of mind? What's your most pressing issue? What do you want to be talking about? And then reflect on that to ensure that whatever you're doing, whether it's conversations or content that they can download, is of value to them. And then one thing we're doing is we've gotten our number one request was like mobile app, because our community often is so busy during the day and they a lot of times can't even go on social media in their companies. So we're creating a mobile app because we get a lot of registrations and activity on the weekend and off hours. So we want to make it as easy for people to connect as possible. But just, I think, listening, that like active listening to what's happening in the community and then like really crafting, things that work, that meet their needs is the important thing.
Absolutely. And Molly, what about you over in the Visioneer community?
Yeah, I think a lot of what Lynda said is spot on, and I'll probably end up building on that from the participation perspective. Quickly on adoption and strategies for driving adoption, just make sure that you are building community into every phase of your customer journey, all the way from pre-sales to renewals. It doesn't matter where you sit. Make sure that your teams know how to talk about community so that they're pitching it to your community members. It's top of mind. People are talking about it. So we have slides for our sales team where they can introduce community in their sales conversations. Our professional services team will always direct people to community if there's folks who are looking to connect with other people to learn like how to build specific things within Gong. Our marketing team talks about community on social media. Hopefully you've seen some things in our blog. Product talking about community, like we have a link to community within our product. So if you click the little question mark in the top right corner in the Gong app, you'll find community. make sure that everybody at your organization in every part of your organization is talking about community from the adoption side. On the participation side, I would say something I think we do well is that we're very strategic about who we target. So we track who is active in our community, and active is a measurement that we've built based on like how many times they're visiting, how many times they post within a certain time frame. We also focus on key personas. And then we'll look at people who are like up for renewal or who are new customers, and we'll stack rank those people, and we'll actually reach out one-on-one and just have conversations, understand how they're using community, what they want to get out of it, start to make those connections for them so that we can create good relationships from the start and build the right programs for our people. Something Lynda mentioned is just building personal relationships and recognizing the people that are active. So something I like to do is, we have a pretty small budget, but with the budget that we have, we created like custom Visioneer socks. And you would be shocked at how much people love these socks. And I'll just send them out randomly to someone who answers a question or attends an event or speaks up at an event. And it goes so far. Like you'll see those people come back just because you spent a little extra time to send them something or recognize them for their work. Again, from participation side and listening and understanding what people want, we also use tools and run programs that help me connect people and help them accomplish what they're looking to accomplish with community. So I mentioned our one-on-one networking. We also have a meetup program. So there are 2 meetups in our community led by our community members. The first is for women in revenue. It's open to customers and prospects. The second is called How Visioneers Use Gong, majority customers. And it's where we invite someone from our community to teach our group how they're doing X, Y, or Z in Gong every month. And it's great. It helps us scale our success efforts because we're having people teach other people how to use the product rather than us do it for them. And it's regular. It's every second Tuesday of the month, so people know what to expect. And we've had membership increase since launching. So again, listening, finding ways to build programs that people are going to care about and that they'll find value from is very important.
Absolutely. And, we're coming up towards the end of our time. So we have 2 final questions that I'm going to ask, and then we'll jump into our Q&A. But Lynda, to kind of close out our session for officially slated questions, the last one we have is, what are essential components of building an online community for business to business communities?
Okay, so I think the member-to-member connections are key. Building networks, that's what people are going to come back for, as I've said before. I think creating, and this is, I think for us, it's a learning community, and it's a community where it's changing, things are changing so rapidly in the industry. So learning from the experiences of others and who have tried things or tested things and what's worked and what hasn't, sharing ideas and getting advice on how to tackle new challenges as they're arising. There are legislations always changing. The EEOC just came out with all this new guidance on what organizations need to do to be held accountable for or so they aren't liable for harassment and misconduct. And so people are trying to figure out how to deal with all of these things. And they're asking others, what are you doing? What have you done? How have you changed this? So access to resources and things that they just can't get elsewhere. It makes them sticky and it makes them come back and it makes them feel valued. And member contributed content is also growing for us. People will say, hey, I'm looking at updating this policy. Does anyone have a good one that they wouldn't mind sharing? We'll anonymize it and then share it to the whole community. So things like that, just delivering things that are of value to your members and constantly reflecting and saying, why are we doing this? Is this actually value to the members? I think is really important.
Oh, thank you so much. And Molly, what do you think are the essential components for building a community for B2B?
Yeah, I think I'm going to echo a lot of what Lynda said. I like to think about this question from a broader lens, because communities in general have always existed outside of B2B organizations. And so when I think about essential components of a thriving community, whether it's B2B organization or not, I think there are three main components. And again, Lynda touched on these. Number one is value. Number two is relationships. And number three is growth. So when I think about community, for me, I think about my workout community. So I'm a big Core Power member. I don't know if that's widely known, but it's like a yoga sculpt kind of community or class. And I'm also really big into Peloton. So I have a great workout community. And the things that I get from those communities are, I really enjoy the content of the classes. I get value from those classes. I've met tons of new people who have actually become friends from going to classes. And I've also become a stronger, better version of myself. And I think the same is true for online communities, for B2B organizations. Like, people are looking to connect with each other. They want to find value and they want to grow in their career and in their personal lives. So from a value perspective, actually in our community, we see that people spend around 2.5 minutes in our community, which is actually 3 times longer than the average B2B website. And 50% of our visitors come back more than 3 times. So we know that our content is valuable. In terms of relationships, there were 2 women who met in our one-on-one matching program, and they connected on a personal level. They formed a friendship. They ran our Women in Revenue meetup for 2 years. They now have a podcast together. So our community is helping build real relationships. Yeah. And in terms of like growing in their careers, people who attend our meetups, they learn something new. They learn about how their peers are using the product. And I remember in one meetup, like, someone shared how to prove value to their CRO. And we had someone take the content from that meetup, apply it in their own life, came back and said, that meetup made me look really good in my meeting with our CRO. So it helps people grow in their careers. So I think if you can deliver on those 3 things, your community will be a success no matter what.
Oh, beautiful. Thank you both so much. And we're going to go ahead and transition into our Q&A. And our first question that we have is, can you tell us about your proudest moment or biggest achievement in building customer community? And Molly, if you want to kick us off with that one, that would be fantastic.
Sure. Again, goes back to listening to your community members. This past year, I ran a 3-part Ask Me Anything series with our C-suite and our community. Our visionaries really had an appetite to hear from our C-suite and understand how they were running their business. So I created the opportunity for them to ask them directly. So we invited our CRO, our CEO, and our CFO on 3 separate occasions to come to like a very informal meetup type of environment where people submitted questions, they answered them on the fly. And those 3 events actually had the highest CSAT scores out of any of our webinars that we've ever run. I wrote down some of the feedback that I got because it meant so much to me. People shared things like, this event helped make our renewal conversations more impactful. It was a great opportunity to get tactical advice from stakeholders that we never get time with. This was really hyper relevant to the challenges that we were trying to solve. So I knew that we really hit the mark on the head with those events. And we also had great feedback from our C-suite. They got a lot out of it. They understood the challenges that our customers were having. It was also a good reminder for our C-suite why community is so important. And finally, just for me personally, it was a really good example of trying something new and actually winning at it. I think a lot of times, I know for me, I scare myself out of doing things that I'm afraid I'm going to fail at. And so I just don't do them. And this time I did it and it paid off. And I was really proud of that.
Oh, I'm so excited for you. And I relate to that. Lynda, what about you for
That's awesome, Molly. So on our side, I think the biggest thing right now that I'm feeling really happy about is we're really trying, our engagement has always been really strong, but we have been trying to get the member-to-member conversations really going. So our events were a little bit lackluster. Like the events, the content was good, but there wasn't enough engagement with participants. And we'd say, come, turn your cameras on. This is a safe space, and just invite people to have that conversation. We make it really informal, and we promote it that way and all that. And the topics are always amazing. The information shared is always great. We get great feedback on it, but we just would hang up from these calls. And sometimes our ER strategy, chief people officer or our CEO would be on one or the other. And so it's their time too. And we would get off and just feel like the interaction was not what we wanted. The information was fine, but we would get off and be like, oh, it's like pulling teeth. And so we tried to do a number of things. And we tried 3 new series this spring. And they're all like where we're featuring panelists. So we have like 2 or 3 people, leading a session. And we always have a customer. Sometimes we'll have 3 customers, but we try to mix it up so that it's not, self-serving. But it really has made a huge difference because they're talking and they get people talking. We've had at one point almost 2 full screens of people with their cameras on, and we were like, this is huge. But overall, the average registration for Q2 went up 89% year over year. So the average was 115 people who were registered and attending these events. And so we feel like, wow, we were just, as Molly said, like there's a lot of test and learn, and some things work and some things don't. And that's okay. You're not gonna get it right all of the time. But we felt like, wow, all of a sudden we have hit the nail on the head. And sure enough, we went back and we did one recently that just had 1 leader, and it was good. And there were more people than participated a year ago in the conversation, but it just didn't have that same energy. Yeah. So I feel like we're on to something, which is really great.
Oh my gosh, congratulations on that. That's also huge. It's such a huge increase year over year.
Well, that goes to our coordinator who, does the muscle there.
That's so exciting. Okay, so the next question we have from the audience, and I think this might be our last question before we wrap up, is any advice on how to prove the ROI of your community pre-launch when you're still planning and in the strategy stage? And I'll leave the floor open to
That's a tough one. Molly, you want to go?
I was just going to kind of go back to my answer of finding someone at your executive level who understands the value of community, because they can be your mouthpiece. And a lot of it is like, taking a leap of faith. And I think you have to have some sort of proof point. So Lynda, I know you mentioned like community spawned out of
yes,
event.
Our roundtable, yes.
Similar origin story where we ran a CAB, customer advisory board, and the folks in that advisory board wanted to continue to stay in touch. And so we created a Slack group, and we were like, here you go, here's your Slack group. And nothing proceeded to happen. Like people just weren't engaged. So that for us was the first sign that, oh, maybe we should be building something bigger where we have someone running this, that we are building programs for people that are keeping them engaged. So I think you do need a little bit of like some sort of experiment in the beginning where you can say, okay, here's our proof of value. Let's take this and run with this. And then it also does involve a little bit of faith from your leadership team. And I think another tip, that's something that we did when we launched our community, was we tied it to a big event. So 2 times a year, we run an event called Celebrate. There's tons of people that tune in. There's tons of people that are there live. So if you can use an event like that to launch your community, you'll get a lot of buy-in just naturally from your, prospective community. So I think hopefully you'll have enough people where you're start to see the results of that early.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And as I turned it over to you, I was thinking that makes sense. The roundtable for us, we actually could already see, because that had been well-oiled machine before we started community. And we do see a ton of revenue that comes from that event. It's a total thought leadership event. There's no sponsors, there are no vendors. We don't sell at the event. Our salespeople are only there. They are not allowed to sell. There are no demos. So it's a very intentional thought leadership strategic event, but we do see sales come out of it every year. and prospects. It definitely feeds our pipeline. So I think we had that like hook where they believed, and our CEO was she was all in about it. So I think that's huge. But I think your answer partially hits on one of the other questions, was about like the beginning phases of launching it and how do you get momentum in terms of engagement. And you do have to have some faith, but you also have to have some intention, and you have to be willing to like reach out to some of those key people that you've identified, key customers or key prospects, just people who, in our case, in our thought leader community, who you'll say, hey, I saw someone ask, can you answer this? Or, hey, can you post a question this week about something? Because we didn't want it to always be us posting, because if it's just our internal people posting all the time, it looks like a promotional thing, whether it's thought leadership or not. So just kind of you kind of have to just dive in and try different things. And we were actually super surprised at how quickly and how much less of that we had to do. People just started talking and they just started answering, and we would like things and we'd be like, oh, it's so nice to see you here. Like, so glad this is helpful, and ask like an add-on question or something like that. But it just kind of grew organically. So you do have to, there is a faith component there, I think, than just believing in what you're doing. And if you really do have the value, and you're offering something that they need and want, I think it's going to be successful if you manage it well.
Don't be afraid to experiment. That's the biggest takeaway I just took from both of you just now, is experiment, test, try again. All right. So I wish Molly, Lynda, I wish we could speak for another 2 hours, because both of you bring so much to this conversation, but unfortunately we're out of time. So thank you so much again, everyone in the audience, for asking questions and being here with us today. And Lynda, Molly, thank you again for sharing all of your insights and expertise with us. I learned so much from both of you. To our audience, we'll be sharing the recording out with you by email. And if you have any questions, please hit the reply button to that email, and you'll be able to ask us questions and we'll be able to follow up with you. A survey link has just been dropped in the chat, and we would really appreciate it. It would mean the world to us if you could take one moment to just fill that out about today's webinar and let us know what you thought. Many thanks. And thank you so much again for everyone for tuning in.
Thanks for having us.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.